proud member of CBS. Sergeant Arms deployed in Opalama in support of a 4 Engineer Support Regiment, and he was the second in command in the combined kitchen out in Clarenville. And during that operation, his section were instrumental in feeding 300 plus soldiers who were out in Trouty and various spots around Clarenville. So for the building of the bridges, this is the guy that kept the fuel of nutrition running into the veins of the soldiers that were humping those bridge parts. And he did a fine job. You ask any soldier who was the most important member of the team, and they'll always talk about the cooks in the back. So Sergeant Arms, thank you so much for your contribution to Operation Llama. Representing our Air Force, we have another local son who's come down to us from Halifax, but loves the area, from Ottawa, sorry, and loves the area. Corporal Norman Del Pino. He's an aviation technician with the Air Reserve in Torbay. He's a key member of the team that was responsible for assisting Joint Task Force Newfoundland Air Component in maintaining an air bridge from St. John's, Nine Wing and Gander out to the ships in the various bays and the communities affected by the disaster. His actions and dedication on and off the flight line ensured successful launch and recovery of 60 plus flights transporting urgently needed supplies, equipment and personnel to the affected areas. Thank you, Corporal Del Pino. The devastation and heartbreak from Hurricane Igor is not something any of us want to see anytime soon again. But I was very proud of the way the government of Newfoundland, the average Newfoundland Labradorian, the people of the province responded to this disaster. And the Canadian Forces, as part of Operation Llama, was a piece of that equation. I want to assure everybody that your Canadian Forces stands ready at all times to assist in any way we can, should we be required again. And finally, congratulations, and as we say in the military, bravo Zulu, to all those who had a part in the publication of Hurricane Igor and the Eye of the Storm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General. And as you can see, the Brigadier General rose well to the occasion. We like to test people on their emergency response, and he did very well with both the failure of a microphone and the failure of the photographs behind them, but we won't have to try that now on anyone else. As many people know, the proceeds from the sale of this book will be donated to Hurricane Igor relief efforts. Major Wade Budgell of the Salvation Army Hurricane Relief Fund, which in itself has raised over $1 million for Igor relief. The monies that we generate from this book sale relief initiative will be combined with that fund. I'd ask Major Budgell if he'd now say a few words.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here and share on this occasion. First of all, to offer congratulations to the Telegram and to Creative Publishing in creating this wonderful pictorial collection. And long after the vivid memories of Igor have perhaps faded somewhat, this will be a wonderful opportunity for us to recall the images in years ahead as we again turn the cover of this wonderful production. Salvation Army is an international organization. We serve in 120 countries of the world. And that fact is significant because it places us in a strategic position of being able to respond to human need because we have a presence in so many locations around the world. And of course here in Newfoundland and Labrador is no exception. Salvation Army has been present in many of our communities for well over 100 years. And to this point, however, in our history here in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Salvation Army has not found itself involved in disaster relief on the scale that we find ourselves at this particular point. Perhaps some of you will identify the Salvation Army emergency services program with the mobile care unit that you'll see around the community with the red shield on the side, which probably show up at fires and accident sites to provide some assistance to first responders. But it's fair to say that this is the first time we found ourselves involved in this province in being a part of disaster relief on this level across such a wide geographical area and affecting so many communities. It's a part of our DNA, it's a part of our calling, and it's a part of our mandate to serve suffering humanity, and that's why we're involved. And it's our extreme privilege to do so. Very early on, in the early days of the hurricane, the aftermath of Igor, Salvation Army found itself involved in the normal responses that we would find ourselves involved in, the provision of food. Normally the mobile care unit would make its way around communities, but the uniqueness, of course, of this disaster is so many communities were cut off that our mobile unit was not able to get into communities and provide those hot meals. But we were able to mobilize in places like Bonavista and Clarenville and provide hot meals and to come alongside of government officials and the military and other local organizations to provide assistance in those early days. Of course, over the ensuing days, generosity, the Newfoundlanders were true to their reputation in showing themselves as being the most generous people in the world, with all due respect to those who are not a part of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. But we are a generous people. And in the ensuing days after the hurricane, people opened up their hearts, gave of their resources, and as you've heard today, the Salvation Army is now managing a very significant resource, and that necessitates a long-term approach. It necessitates an organizational structure, and we put in place an advisory committee which involves 3 mayors from local communities that were impacted significantly by the disaster. And we have been moving through a process of identifying where needs are, and our message to the people who have been impacted over these last few weeks is simply, if you have needs that are not covered by the emergency program that's administered by Fire and Emergency Services, if you have needs that are not covered, losses that are not covered by your personal home insurance, we want to hear from you, and that's our message going forward in these days. We want to hear from people who have been impacted but are not able to recover their losses through other sources. And so we look at this as being a process, and we will move through this process with transparency, with accountability, and we will be grateful for the opportunity to be, if you want, the conduits of the generosity of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So I thank you for the opportunity of being here today, for the opportunity to speak, and we're grateful most of all for the opportunity to be able to serve our fellow Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Thank you.
Thank you, Major. Now a few words from Charlie Stacey, the publisher and general manager of the Telegram.
Thanks, Russell. So here we were, in the middle of the biggest news story in years. We were hearing statements such as a 1 in 50-year storm, a 1 in 100-year storm, the storm of the century. And where was I through all this? Sitting on a beach in Cuba. Myself and my wife went south for the week, and we missed it all. And who would have thought that we'd be safer in Cuba than here in the middle of storm season, but as it happens, we were. And of course, it was hard to hear about what was actually happening here at home while we were away. We heard a little news and that there was an actual storm and all that sort of thing, but it was only until we arrived in Montreal on the Friday at the end of the week, and we saw the stories on the national news channels, that we saw the extent as to what had happened, and I have to say that we were quite shocked at what we saw. However, through all this, the people at our newspapers throughout the transcontinental chain, right throughout the province, they really stepped up. They ensured the readers had strong, quality newspapers, timely reporting under some very trying circumstances. Their efforts were absolutely over the top in many cases. And you've heard some of the stories. There was a flooded office. We had washed out roads. People working from home with no power, phone lines down. But they found a way. They made it happen. They got their newspaper out. And then there was the aftermath of Igor. Still, lots happening in the news, so some more hectic weeks for our newspapers and newsrooms across the province. Again, they found a way and they made it happen. So they made it through the storm and they made it through the aftermath. Time to take a break, right? No, not quite. Then they said, let's make a book and let's raise funds for those who were harmed by Igor. So they ran over the idea with me. I said, it's fantastic, guys. Go ahead, make it happen. So the newspaper people sat down with the publishing people, Creative Books, and you see the evidence of their work here. Again, they made it happen. So I have to express my thanks, my pride, my admiration for everyone at the Transcontinental Operations right throughout the province, especially those in the hardest hit areas. You guys were absolutely amazing through all this, and fantastic job, guys. Well done. So now let's speak of the fruits of their efforts. As mentioned, we are raising funds for Igor relief through the sale of these books. While we're holding the official launch this afternoon, we've been actually selling for a little over a week now, and we, of course, have lots of orders that we'll be sending out in the next little while. So we've looked at the numbers and we've worked up some estimates as to where we think we will end up with our fundraising efforts. And Wade, if you wouldn't mind stepping forward, we have a little something here for you. So Wade, from all of us at Transcontinental Operations right throughout the province, the Telegram, Creative Publishing, and our Transcontinental community newspapers, we are very proud and very excited to hand you over this check for $100,000.
Charlie, we accept this gift to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. We do so with humility. We thank you for your trust. And whilst the Salvation Army may not do everything perfectly in administering this program, we pledge to do our very best. We pledge to do it with transparency and openness, and ever mindful of the fact that we are accountable to our donors, and we're accountable to the people who will be the recipients of these gifts. So thank you so much for your generosity and for the opportunity to disperse these funds on your behalf.
Thank you all for coming, and especially thanks to Chapters for the use of the space and for their work putting everything together. One last word of thanks that I'd give myself before telling you, of course, that there are snacks and that you should have some, and that there's also a food drive. And if you have food drive donations, the box is over here. I'd like to extend my personal thanks to Donna Francis, Creative Books senior editor. This book has been her project throughout. She led the development from the beginning, and she made this book possible in a lot of ways. It wouldn't be the book it is without her careful thought and hard work. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, and please do join us for some snacks. Thank you.